These children and their families are unique. Their identities are protected by court orders, for they have survived a remarkable ordeal. On the 23rd of September 2021, a small fishing trawler left southern India bound for Canada. On board were a group of Sri Lankan Tamil families, more than 80 in total, including 16 children. Their plan was to sail around the Horn of Africa to a destination halfway around the world. That would mean at least 50 days at sea. But it would, they hoped, allow them to escape persecution and offer their children a future. For the next 10 days and nights, with little food and water on board, they headed south across the Indian Ocean, reliant on passing boats for survival. The fear of death never left those on board. Talking exclusively to Channel 4 News, one mother and her daughter pictured in this photograph recall the overnight storms. When you were on that boat, what did you think was going to happen to you and your family?
அந்த புயல் காத்துல போட் ரொம்ப ஆடும். நைட்ல தூங்க முடியாது. இந்த பக்கம் படுத்துறோம்னா போட் ஆடுறதுல எல்லாரும் அந்த பக்கம் போயிருவோம். டம்முன்னு போய் மண்டை அடிபடும். புள்ளைங்கள நாங்க புள்ளைங்கள புடிச்சிக்கிறதா இல்ல போட்டை நாங்க எங்கேயும் கீழே போய் விழுந்துராம போட்டை இதுக்கு புடிச்சிக்கிறதான்னு எங்களுக்கு தெரியாது. அப்படி ஒரு சூழ்நிலை எனக்கு தலையெல்லாம் போய் டம்முன்னு அடிபடும். அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு இதுல தான் நாங்க ரொம்ப உயிரை கையில பிடிச்சிட்டு தான் நாங்க போனது.
This aging trawler had never ventured so far out to sea, and hopes don't carry rusting boats halfway around the world. Drinking water and food were running out. Desperate supplies came from other passing ships. But then they discovered a leak. The alarm was raised as they neared the island of Diego Garcia, one of the remotest places on Earth, and since the 70s, a secret US-UK military facility. A British military gunboat was dispatched, and the 3rd of October 2021 was the day they were rescued. But it was also the day the family's freedom came to an end. Thunder Cove camp was to become their enforced home for the next 3 years. These US Army tents, originally put up to house troops, overnight became a camp with an entirely different purpose.
எங்களுக்கு ஆரம்பத்திலேயே சொல்லிட்டாங்க, இந்த எல்லையை தாண்டி நீங்கள் போனால் இதில் அமெரிக்கன் இருக்கிறாங்க, அவங்க உங்களை சுற்றுவாங்க, அதனால் நீங்கள் இந்த எல்லையை கடக்கக்கூடாதுன்னு. ஏன்னா எங்களுக்கு வந்து நாங்கள் போன உடனே ஒரு சும்மா ஒரு பிளாஸ்டிக் வேலி மாதிரி போட்டிருந்தவங்க முதல்ல, அந்த 4 பக்கமும் அமெரிக்கன் துப்பாக்கியோடு இருந்தவங்க. நாங்கள் இருந்த ஐலண்ட் வந்து ஒரு சொர்க்கம் மாதிரி இடம், ஆனால் அதில் ஒரு நரகம்ண்டா எப்படி இருக்குமோ அதான் அந்த தண்டர்கோல்.
There were the storms which frequently flooded the tents. They would be served rotting food on occasions, leftovers from the military canteens. And then there were the rats crawling everywhere.
எலிகளை பற்றி சொல்கிறதுக்கு வார்த்தை இல்லை. ஏன்னா குழந்தைங்க மேலெல்லாம் ஏறி விளையாடும் எலி, பிள்ளைங்களை கடிச்சிருக்கு, எங்கள் வீட்டுக்காரை கடிச்சிருக்கு. நாங்கள் இருக்க இடத்துல எலி இருந்ததுன்னு சொல்கிறத விட எலி இருந்த இடத்துல தான் நாங்கள் இருந்தது.
Their only access to the outside world was through this narrow gate by the side of the offices of the camp's contracted security, G4S. It took 2.5 years to be allowed through, and even then only for walks under escort. And yet this child was not allowed to join her parents. Her name wasn't on the list, so she couldn't leave. Conditions became so oppressive that even the Foreign Secretary was warned the camp was in complete crisis. The UK had tried and failed to pass the migrants on to another country, while their lawyers were engaged in a long, protracted battle to have them brought to Britain. Last summer, the migrants held a series of protests which were to ultimately greet a High Court judge who had come to Diego Garcia to see for herself how bad the situation was. So that's your poster, is it? Right. And everyone did their own posters.
We are in try to protest like a hunger strike and then silent protest, everything one day and second day, third day, fourth day, maybe the 5 or 7 day. One time the last protest is 110 days. My daughter, she's 12 years old. She's cut herself. She's tried to suicide. Why? What we do? We are not doing anything. Why she isn't try to suicide? Because it's very hard to living there.
Last month, the Tamil families were relocated to the UK. The government caved in before a damning judgment which declared they had been unlawfully detained on Diego Garcia for 1,155 days. That is very likely the longest any child has ever been detained anywhere and at any time under British sovereignty.
The humanitarian situation had gone beyond breaking point, and any longer they were looking at a humanitarian disaster happening. We'd brought UK proceedings challenging the refusal of the Home Secretary to allow them here. It was costing a huge amount. It was £50 million projected to cost to keep the migrants on the island for last year.
50 million?
Yeah, £50 million to keep them in those abject conditions where they're actively harming families, children, and all those men. I mean, just extraordinary, really.
So extraordinary that immigration lawyers from the firm Duncan Lewis are demanding an inquiry not just into the huge costs involved, but also as to how on earth this was able to happen in the first place. The FCDO responded in a statement saying,
"This government inherited a deeply troubling situation that remained unresolved under the last administration for years after the migrants' arrival on Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia has never been a suitable long-term location for migrants. This government have now relocated almost all of those housed on the island to the UK as a one-off measure to ensure their continued welfare and safety."
Now they are free, even if it's simply to go to the park. They are awaiting places at local schools. But the fight isn't over. Fresh asylum claims are being assessed by a special Home Office team, and their future has few guarantees.
And that report by Simon Israel was produced and partly shot by Sue Clayton.